continues for Northwestern. Well, Big Ten play continues for Northwestern this Saturday against Penn State. It's time to break down the Nittany Lions.
You are Locked On Northwestern, your daily podcast on the Northwestern Wildcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in. This is Locked On Northwestern, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Carter Bird, and thank you for making Locked On Northwestern your first listen every day for anything and everything Northwestern. We are available wherever you get podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever. We are also on YouTube. Just search Locked On Northwestern. You can find us. Make sure you subscribe, turn on notifications. You don't want to miss any episode. Make sure you leave a comment or a review, and because we'd love to get your feedback. We'd love to improve the show the best that we can. And also, I'd like to thank LinkedIn Jobs for being the official college football recruiting sponsor across the Locked On Podcast Network. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. All right, so we know that Northwestern has had a rough start to the year, 1-3. But we know that Northwestern's also 1-0 in conference play with that win over Nebraska. Well, game number 2 is Saturday against Penn State. So let's dive into it. So let's start with that offense. Penn State's offense right now, it's pretty solid. I mean, they're putting up 464.5 yards per game. That includes a couple Power 5 matchups with Purdue and with Auburn. They're running the ball a lot better this season, 185.8 yards per game, and that is for 5.4 yards per rush. They're throwing the ball for 278.8 yards per game as well. 7.7 yards per attempt and 11.9 yards per completion, but that totals up to 6.6 yards per play. This year they have 10 passing touchdowns to 1 interception, and they have 11 rushing touchdowns, and that combines for 38.8 points per game. They're decent, I guess, on third down, 18 for 50. 36%. You would like to see that probably higher if you're a Penn State fan. On fourth down, they are very efficient, however. They're 5 of 9, 55.56%. And then that offensive line has allowed 7 sacks this season. Now, when you look at this offense, the first player that has to jump out to you is the fifth-year senior at quarterback, Sean Clifford, guy who's been there forever. Penn State fans will tell you at times they would probably wish he was gone because there's moments where he's looked pretty average over his 40 years. There's moments where he's looked pretty great. And I think a quote that I heard that was very, very interesting was there's always a but with Sean Clifford. Like, he can look great, but there's always something next. Well, this year he's having the best year he's had so far on Penn State's campus, 75 of 117 for a 64.1% completion percentage, 7.6 yards per attempt, 11.9 yards per completion, 8 touchdowns, 1 interception, has also run the ball 23 times for 54 yards with 4 touchdowns. Also has a 25-yard reception as well. By far his best year. He looks like somebody who's been on campus for a long time, somebody who's understands what Penn State's trying to do. He's done a much better job limiting mistakes this year. His completion percentage is as high as it's ever been in his Penn State career, and it has helped result in what is his strongest year so far. What helps, he has a couple freshman running backs that are making an impact. both true freshmen, actually. We're going to start with Nick Singleton, 43 rushes, 376 yards, averaging 9 yards per rush, has 4 touchdowns. They like to say that he reminds them of Saquon when he was a freshman. I think he's already beating Saquon's pace. He absolutely killed Auburn. He went on the road. He killed Auburn. Didn't do much against Purdue, but has been pretty good since. May have struggled a little bit last week, but he is a key player. He is probably the key player on this Penn State. With him, Catron Allen, another freshman running back, 36 rushes, 207 yards, 6 yards per rush. So both those are getting a first down every 2 times they carry the football. Allen. Then you got a group of pass catchers, and you got 3 guys in the lead of this group, heading up this group that are all within 3 yards of each other, which is fascinating to me. Parker Washington, the wide 16 receptions, 212 yards, does not have a touchdown yet this year, but he leads that group in receiving yards. Next up, Brenton Strange, tight end, 14 receptions, 211 yards, 3 touchdowns. We know Penn State has had a great ability to produce tight ends. Brenton Strange appears to be next on that list. Then finally, Mitchell Tinsley, the wide receiver, Western Kentucky transfer, 17 receptions, 209 yards, 3 touchdowns. That's your group that you're going to see out wide at wide receiver. Those are your names that you're probably going to see make the most impact as far as skill position. Offensive line has been solid. They pushed Auburn around, especially in the second half. But I think at times they may have not been exactly what Penn State wanted. They don't grade out super well on Pro Football Focus, but I do think that they are a very, very capable Big Ten offensive line. And that's basically going to do it for the offensive line, or for the offense, rather. In just a second, we are going to talk about that Penn State defense. But first, let's talk about our friends at LinkedIn. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% that you can access the best qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. I mean, look, I've just started a couple roles here recently, and LinkedIn Jobs was a key place for me to find openings and be able to apply for them. So I can verify this with experience for sure. But when you add your job and the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on the candidates with just the right skills and experience, so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to hire. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, so we've talked about this Penn State offense. Let's now talk about this Penn State defense. This defense has been pretty strong this year, allowing 366.8 yards per game. You probably have some outliers there, like the Purdue passing performance that probably inflates this a little bit. 91.8 rushing yards per game. So they stopped the run, which will be something interesting to keep an eye on Saturday. Passing yards, 275 yards per game. They're giving up 5 yards per play, 3.4 yards per rush, so they're stopping the run well. 11.3 yards per completion, 5.8 yards per attempt. And they are allowing their opponents to just a 51.3% completion percentage. They've allowed 4 passing touchdowns and 3 rushing touchdowns to this point in the season, while intercepting 4 passes with 61 return yards and recovering 5 fumbles. So they've turned teams over 9 times to just 7 touchdowns this year. They've also forced 5 fumbles. They have 11 sacks and 22 tackles for loss. Some key players to keep an eye on this Penn State defense is Jair Brown. He leads the team with 19 tackles, 1.5 tackles for a loss, 1 sack, 1 interception, 1 pass defended, and 1 forced fumble. Next up, Curtis Jacobs, 17 tackles, second on the team, 1.5 tackles for loss, 1 sack, 1 pass defense, and 1 forced fumble. A guy to keep an eye on for sure with this Penn State defense is Joey Porter Jr., a guy who has 16 tackles this year, 9 passes defended, and 1 fumble recovery. He's somebody who you're going to hear his name called extremely early in the 2023 NFL Draft. Projected first-round pick out at corner. Really, really good player. It'll be interesting to see what Northwestern does with him on the field. Opposite him, Johnny Dixon, another corner, 7 tackles. Not a ton of tackles, but 2.5 tackles for a loss, which is a lot for a corner. 2 sacks, ton for a corner at this point in the season. 1 interception, 5 passes defended. I think he's second on the team in that category. And then finally, if you see a number 11 running around up back there, somebody who might remind you of Micah Parsons and players of the past that have worn that number for Penn State. They've got a young guy in Abdul Carter, 16 tackles, 1 tackle for loss, 1 sack, 2 passes defended, and 1 forced fumble. All in all, this defense it's fast, it's athletic. They're not afraid to be physical, and I think you're going to see that on Saturday. They're going to try to stop the run, and they're going to blitz, and we're going to talk more about that here in a second. But first, let's talk about our friends at BetOnline. BetOnline is your number one source for football betting info this season. Find all the latest player developments, team matchups, news, podcasts, and in-depth articles and analysis on every game you can find. And as always, BetOnline remains your continued source for all your sports wagering information, with live betting and up-to-the-minute scores for every sport out there. The fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite games and events, including MLB, MMA, boxing, and golf. Head to BetOnline or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, so now that we've talked about the offense, now that we've talked about the defense, let's kind of just go with our takeaways. Look, this Penn State team is physical. When they run, they are dangerous, very dangerous. It makes everything on the offense flow better. It makes them explosive. It gives them, if they can run the ball all season long, they'll be right there in the Big Ten East. I'll talk more about that here in a couple moments. But when they don't run, I mean, it can be a struggle for Sean Clifford because then the burden falls on him. He has to make plays, and when you make him make play after play after play, sometimes he can start to look very, very average. Sometimes he can start to make a lot of mistakes. This year, he's done a great job avoiding that. The Purdue game, maybe not the cleanest game he's played, but he did lead the game-winning touchdown drive there and looked pretty daggum strong doing it. Against Auburn, just handled his business. Wasn't asked to do anything crazy, but played a very, very strong, clean game and resulted in a strong performance but he wasn't the headliner. The headliner was Nick Singleton, who at times has run absolutely wild this season. Guy who is all over the field for this Penn State offense, and he just makes plays. He is tough to bring down. He's athletic, and he can take any carry to the house, and that's kind of his skill set, and that's kind of what he showed against Auburn. I mean, he took a long one for a touchdown against the Tigers down in Jordan-Hare Stadium, and he's somebody who, if this offense can get going, he's an issue. I mean, he has 2 great games this year and 2 not so great games. Against Purdue, 10 carries, 31 yards. Against Ohio, 10 carries, 179 yards, 2 touchdowns. Against Auburn, 10 carries, 124 yards, 2 touchdowns. And then finally, last week against Central Michigan, 12 carries, 42 yards. So it is in the 2 games that have been close for Penn State, he has struggled. In the 2 games where they have blown the doors off teams, he's gone wild. On defense, they blitz a ton. They send pressure all the time. It's what Manny Diaz is known for. The former Miami coach, former Mississippi State defensive coordinator, had been all over the place, really. He has well earned the reputation for someone who blitzes a lot. Did it a lot against Auburn. Got all sorts of pressure behind Auburn's bad offensive line. The key there is Northwestern might have the best offensive line that Penn State has seen. Can Northwestern be prepared for that? And that's going to be something that you keep an eye on. Tons of tackles for loss, tons of sacks, 11 sacks as a defense through 4 games. Strong all the way around. Don't really have a true read on how good this Penn State team is going to be this year. Just from the aspect that I still think they're behind Ohio State. I still think they're behind Michigan. Could they show me something in Big Ten play? Could they show me some consistency that we haven't seen from Penn State teams in recent years? Yes. And they could show themselves there in that conversation with Michigan. I'm still not sure they'd be in that conversation with Ohio State. I think Ohio State's pretty salty this year. But I am very curious to see how this team stacks up in Big Ten play. That's going to be something I'm going to have my eye on. The Purdue game, Purdue kind of gave that game away there late. Purdue should have beaten them, and that was their first road test of the year, their first Big Ten game of the year. I came away from that game thinking Purdue should have won. Purdue was the better team on the field. Then they go down to Auburn. And as I phrased it previously, they just kind of took a sledgehammer to Auburn's face. And it was bad. And they just manhandled Auburn. They destroyed them. They were more physical. They're a better team, better coached. Everything about them was better on that Saturday. And that's how they ended up with a 41-12 win on the road at an SEC team that generally – at a stadium that's generally hard to win at. We've seen Alabama, we've seen Georgia, we've seen LSU. We've seen teams have trouble winning games at Jordan-Hare Stadium. Penn State waltzed in and smacked Auburn like it wasn't like they were playing in front of 9,000 fans out at Hawaii's games in their new stadium. So my things I'm going to keep an eye on. Can Northwestern limit Singleton? Can they keep him from going berserk like we've seen a few times this season? Can they hold him? Can they hold him below that 50 mark that we've seen twice? Or is he going to go for that 120 plus mark that we've seen twice? We haven't really seen an in-between performance out of him. Can this Northwestern defense find a way to contain Nick Singleton? Next, can Northwestern make Ryan Helinski comfortable back there? This is the best offensive line, in my mind, that Penn State has seen. Is Northwestern prepared enough to handle all the blitzes and all the pressures from Penn State? And give Ryan Helinski time? Can they let him read the defense? And then what does Ryan Helinski do with that? Does he go test Joey Porter, the first-round pick, a bunch? That'd be an interesting choice. I don't know. Do you see the running backs more involved in the pass game to try to get the ball out of Ryan Helinski's hands in the face of pressure? Maybe. We'll see. Can Northwestern run the football against this Penn State team? Again, best offensive line that Penn State has seen. Pretty good pair of running backs on this Northwestern roster between Evan Hull and Cam Porter. Cam Porter looked good last week. Evan Hull's been phenomenal all year. Can those two get going? That's going to be my other key that I keep an eye on. Those are kind of my takeaways as I look forward to this game. Can't wait to see how it plays out. I think it'll be closer than the line. I think the line's gotten a little out of control, but we'll talk more about that later this week. But yeah, I mean, I think that this is an interesting test for both of these teams. How does Northwestern get off the mat? Is Penn State for real? We've seen them play a couple Power 5 games, struggle in one, but win and then dominate another. Which Penn State team are they? I think that remains to be seen, but that's going to do it for today's episode. I'm Carter Bird. I'm the host here at Locked On Northwestern. You can follow me on social media at CarterBird13 on Instagram and Twitter. We're come back here later this week. We've got more episodes coming. We got a crossover with Locked On Nittany Lions. And yeah, I think it's gonna be good stuff. It's gonna be fun to listen to. But I want to thank everybody for making Locked On Northwestern their first listen every day for anything and everything Northwestern. We're available wherever you get podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever. We're on YouTube. Just search Locked On Northwestern. Make sure you subscribe, turn on notifications, leave a comment, leave a review. We'd love your feedback. We'd love to make the show better. But also, if you're a Big Ten fan, you need to know what your team is up against across the Big Ten with Locked On Big Ten. Every day, host Nate Dickinson and the local experts of Locked On take you across the Big Ten in 30 minutes. Make Locked On Big Ten your second listen. Locked On Big Ten. All right, well, that's going to do it for today. See you back tomorrow. I think tomorrow is going to be the crossover episode, if I recall. But yeah, see you then.